Hi there and welcome to Whirlwind Wargaming. So today we're going to take a look at the Space Wolves Wulfen set. We'll unbox and build this. So please like and subscribe, and I'll try to do more of these unbox and build videos as we come forward. So Warhammer 40k, Space Wolves Wulfen. This box has got 5 models in it. The back here is showing a few different build options. So let's open it up and can have a little look at what's inside. This particular kit I purchased from a local game store, but looking online you can see that you can get it from Warhammer for £40 or from some third-party stores from as cheap as £32, then with postage and packaging with some of those stores as well. I think my local store had it for about £36, I think it was. So yeah, you got your 5 bases. You've got some nicely detailed sprues with some multiple weapon options: hammers, double-end axes, the sort of woven spikes, shields. I think these sprues were originally done in 2016, so 10-year-old now. There's been rumours about perhaps they may get updated. Some people don't like the particular stance of some of the figures, but I don't mind them, they're okay. Now a little instruction booklet then. This one has got the sort of safety instructions on the front there, and as we open it up we've got 3 different build options here. We got the hammers and shields on the bottom there in green, then you've got your sort of double-handed axes, and then you've got your Wulfen sort of spikes as well, with that sort of pack leader one in the middle there in yellow at the top, with the double-handed axes. I'm going to go for the hammers and shields. That's how I'm going to build this particular set. But yeah, we'll have a little flick through the sort of instruction build. So colour-coded, the Wulfen with storm shields, this is how they are in game. The sort of base stats are the same as your standard Wulfen without the shields. The only bonus of the shield is you get the 4-up and vulnerable save. You've also got the death totem as well. So you can option between that or the Fragstorm launcher. With the death totem, you get to reroll your 1s basically. So flipping through then, as I said, there was the colour coding of the build options. So I'm going to be going for the hammer and shield option over this one, which is the green one. So you can see there on the bottom of the left-hand page the different colours and the different build options. So the blue, the sort of magenta and green. And as I said, there's 5 different figures. So the sort of base body sculpt is the same, but the arm layout will be slightly different for each one. I think some of the builds incorporate the same arms. For, you know, the same arm holding the axe. Perhaps the left arm would be the same arms as holding the hammer or holding the shield. And on the back there you can see, they're already put up from the Warhammer Plus site, the sort of builds. You can see here these instructions were printed in 2024. So whereas the sprues are 2016, the instructions are 2024, and have been done for 10th edition really. So let's get into the build then. As I've already said, I'm going to be building the hammer version, but I say the core base of the model is more or less the same, the legs and torso. They are quite small pieces then with a lot of these, and sort of multi-parts to each one of the limbs. The leg has got the sort of foot section, the main leg section, and the sort of armour greave that goes over the top of the thigh for each leg, and then you glue the 2 legs together. So carefully look through your sprue, look for your parts, snip them off. Be careful because they are small bits. When you nip them off with your pliers, sometimes they can fly away. So I tend to sort of pinch them between finger and thumb, just to make sure they don't spring off once you've nipped through them. Can be a little bit of tension there sometimes. And the last thing you want is to be on your hands and knees hunting around the room looking for a small little grey piece of plastic which could have gone anywhere. So yeah, clean off with your craft knife. There are a couple of mould lines here. You can see one there. So I've got the back of my scalpel here. I'm just going to scrape that mould line down. They're fairly fine. You could probably dissolve it with a bit of Tamiya extra thin glue as well once you've built your model up and you're not going to touch it again until it dries. That does tend to do a reasonable job of dissolving any of the really thin mould lines. Just dry fit everything together as I've just done there now, just to make sure that it's all going to fit properly and it's all going to line up and you've got no more little bits of excess mould or any warp in the sprue that you might have missed. And then a little bit of glue in there, just hold it together. So as I say, I've got the Tamiya extra thin cement. This particular one it creates a chemical reaction to melt the plastic together, really. It's not a glue that sticks to the surface and dries. This actually melts the plastic. And then as the sort of solvent element of that glue evaporates, then it just leaves the plastic bonded together. So I'm making sure it fits here. Just trying to feel for where the little knobble on the mould is sort of sitting together. It doesn't feel great on this one, but this is the first model of the 5 that we're going to build, and I'll only go through the sort of the build process that I went through with this particular one, and then we'll take a look at all 5 models once I've built them then. So yeah, there's the first leg done then. So step 2A is complete, looking for the opposite leg then. See, the numbers on these sprues aren't great sometimes. Sometimes they're floating off or they're on the side and you think, is that for this part opposite it? So have a good look around, have a look at the instructions, making sure that your part marries up with the sort of looks the same shape as the one in the sprue before you go cutting it off. Otherwise you're going to end up with parts that you've cut off and you can't remember what number they are. And so yeah, try and only remove, or I try only to remove the parts I need for that particular step rather than jumping too far ahead. Obviously, as you get, if you're building a lot of models at the same time, there may be a sort of set sort of process to it, and you might be able to nip off the arms, the torso, the legs, and then go glue them on because they'll all be the same sort of pieces for that, but they might be in slightly different positions. Clean up all your mould lines as I'm doing here, and any excess bit of sprue, which is the snippers hadn't taken off the actual finished bit of the model. Making sure that you've got them off so each piece is going to sort of fit nicely against one another then. So just making sure that when you're cutting, you're being extra careful, that you're not going to catch your finger. Bear in mind we're using scalpels here, you're using modelling tools that designed to cut. They're really sharp, so you are going to potentially cause yourself a nasty injury if you catch your finger. Sorry, as you can see, I've filmed this and I've kind of gone out of, not focus, but I've gone out of frame with my hand position below the camera. But yeah, it's it's a careful process building models. You need to just make sure that all your little mould pieces are off, and everything fits together before you apply some glue. Otherwise you're going to put the glue on and then part of it's going to stick and it won't be fitting properly and you'll end up with unsightly gaps. So the more preparation, the more care you give now, the better the chances overall that you're going to need less filling and less sanding later, at a later stage when it might be a lot more difficult once the model's fully built. So we'll keep on going through the process now of building these, applying our glue. This is the sort of upper leg greave for that left leg then. And there's the sort of little clawed toes to fit onto the back of this leg as well. So this particular model looks like it's leaping off a little bit of rock as they're sort of bounding into combat. So those two there, and then you can see there's that little sort of rectangular piece knobble there which fits into the little rectangular depression, and that'll be your two legs, your left and right leg together. So this creates the sort of from the waist down part of the model, and you can see that's kind of leaping away there then. So we've done that bit. We're going to move on to the next stage now, which is the front and rear of the torso. So identify them on your sprue. These two are quite next to one another, so we'll just nip them off now and get them cleaned up. we're going to dry fit these first of all. First time I built this kit, so I'm not sure whether gluing the two together would be the better thing to do, or apply the front half then the back half. What I found building this set is it's easier to put the front half on first. It'll sort of find its way to where it's supposed to sit, and it'll hold itself there relatively well. But I'll show that bit now as we get to it. So just making sure that's all cleaned up, having a good look around here. Anything on the edges there, just making sure they're cleaned up. And then we can glue it together. So I will go through just the process of this one particular model, and then I'll show all 5 as they're built then at the end. And I imagine it probably wouldn't be too... So hang on, here we go. Now we'll try and get this fitting in. It's a bit tight, it just doesn't sort of slip in. No, not quite fitting properly there. So I'll try again with just making sure that everything is lined up. So checking the front and back there now before you put it on the legs. That fits together well there. It doesn't want to push in, it wants to pop open. So this isn't one where you could glue the top and bottom half together. You do have to... Is it slotted in yet? Yeah, it's slotted in now. You can see it's sitting there but without any pressure being applied to it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue now, and I'm going to glue that. This is the front piece of the loincloth coming down between the legs, the sort of front of the torso. I'm going to glue that in place, and then I'm going to put a bit of glue on the back here, and then I'm going to press the back part of the body in, and that's yeah. So it definitely fits better by putting the front section of the torso on first. That'll sort of find its way. You've got to put it in a little bit of an angle, and that is the same for all 5 models. And then the back section will sort of sit on there quite nicely. So yeah, so when you're building these, make sure you put the front section on first of the torso, then put the back section onto the legs as your sort of second step. So just cleaning off now the parts of the backpack. I've decided with my backpacks, you've got the options of having either the frag launcher or having the death totem. So I'm going to go for the death totem because that gives you in-game, I believe it's you re-roll your ones to hit. Certainly with the hammers, because you've only got 2 attacks, then having that sort of chance of potentially re-rolling one of your misses will vastly improve your sort of hit ratio overall. The other thing I found with these models, they've got these little knives which each one of the Wulfens have got, but they don't really sit that well on the side of the model. They just sort of rest there. In hindsight, I probably would have left it off. Could have potentially used that then as a sort of Space Wolves themed knife to add to sort of a regular sort of set of like intercessors or something. Because it's got like a more sort of rustic leather type sheath for the knife, and it's also, some of them got like a little talisman hanging off there or a little tooth hanging off there. Some of them got a sort of bone handle, so they I think they'd sort of add a little bit of theme in then if you were having some sort of generic Space Marine models and you wanted to sort of Space Wolf them up a little bit along with any additional sort of upgrade sprues that you had to keep your theme of your army all the same. So there we are, we've done that next step now. We've done the backpack, we've done the knife, we've applied all that to the lower legs. And now we're going to look for the death totem. So this is the sort of skull and crossbone sort of thing that sits on top of the backpack. I say the alternative for that would have been the frag launcher, which is a sort of blast weapon with a short range in it. So if you go in more for a fighting against more sort of horde type armies or one wounding models, then the frag launcher will probably be okay. It might be a bit more useful than the rerolls of ones to hit. The only downside is it's just 1 damage, and it's 0 AP as well. So it depends what type of army you're fighting against. There's pros and cons with it all, but as I said, I'm going to go for the death totem here. You can see the little skull and bones, which sit on top of the backpack. Just tidying this up, and this slots into those grooves on the top of the backpack here. You can. I've gone out of frame again. I am sorry. So yeah, just give it a little bit of a file here just to make sure it sits nice. So you can see the 2 grooves there, and that's where the grooves of that sit in. Applied on, and that sits in quite nice, really. Just cleaning this part off. So with the head now, I've gone for the sort of wild flying hair in the background. The majority of these woven heads have got sort of very wild hair, which I think they've sort of modelled it to look like the hairs sort of blowing wildly behind them as they're leaping forward or charging forward. It's perhaps a little bit sort of anime in its sort of representation of sort of that sort of wild berserker hair, which is all flared out at all angles. I don't know. You could perhaps switch these for a more sort of generic sort of bareheaded space marine if you wanted to. It's quite a large neck on these models, so you might have to pile that back a little bit just to make the head fit on there and look half tidy. And then I've gone and glued the model to the base now. Bear in mind the pose of it is coming forward, so you want to be sort of positioning it further back on the base. Otherwise you're going to be overhanging the base too much and the model's probably going to fall over. So yeah, just be mindful when you're gluing it on that you probably want to position it further back so the center of gravity is sort of above the base rather than forward of the base. Otherwise your model's going to tip over, especially now once we put the weight of the hammer and the shield on here as well with the 2 arms. So yeah, I was going for the green instruction section now, because we've gone to a next step in here showing the sort of multiple weapon options. So we're looking for the hammer we need, and we're looking for the arms we need. So careful nipping these off. These arms have got the sort of cables that run to the backpack, which clips into the sort of bicep stud and of the particular Space Marine, or this Wulfen then, which is a sort of it's kind of a mutated Space Marine. There's a flaw in the gene seed of the Wulfen. And then nip the other one off. Again, with all the parts, make sure everything's cleaned up. All your contact areas where you're going to be gluing one bit to the other is cleaned off, because they do tend to connect to the sprues on the contact area. So when you cut them off, it's not really seen. If you cut a bit too deep, or if you pull a bit off, it does give you a chance to sort of hide any miscuts. Just making sure those mold lines are off here. But this is it's a pretty good kit. This is, so there's not much in the way of mold lines. There are a few, but nothing untoward. You can see the pipe there fits into this little knobble on the back of the backpack. It just rests on there and rests on the arm, so you can see whether your position of your arm is correct, with the way it sits in the shoulder sort of section, and then comes around, and the cable should sit on the back of the power pack there on the backpack. hold that for you. There we go. The arm is in place, head is in place, and then your final arm then. So again, cleaning off the contact areas. Important that you do that with your models while you're assembling them. It stops you having any complications then when you're gluing. You've got the hand is on the lower haft of that hammer, so making sure the contact area on the arm is cleaned up, and then making sure that the contact area on the back of the hand marries up to that as well. So that's going to fit on there, and then the little stud will fit on the back of the backpack as well. So the same here with this left arm as we did with the right arm. Making sure it's on, a little bit of pressure to make sure that everything's pushing into the right areas. And you can see that, there we are, he's more or less done. So cleaning up the top of the hammer here. What I did find was I had nipped a little bit too deep on one or two of the hammers, and it might cause a little indent, so I may have to put some filler in there. This one is cleaning up relatively well though. Just feeling with your finger, you've got there's a little ridge there, you can see it as you're tilting the piece in from left to right under the light. It's showing a slightly different reflection of where the mold line is. So some tiny mold lines there. As I said, if you can't get all the mold lines off, or the mold line is very fine, you can normally apply a little bit of perhaps the extra thin cement will sort of melt the mold line away for you. So just making sure that that sits in the position I want it to. Apply a bit of glue there. Oops. And then put the hand onto the base of the arm. You're going to have to hold it in place just for a second or two, just while things evaporate. Just wanted to square up that wrist a little bit. Look for any alterations now or any adjustments while the glue hasn't quite fully evaporated then, so the two pieces aren't cued together. So the last piece is here now. You've got these parts, which is the shield, and then you've got the sort of shoulder plate on the opposite side. So pick the shield off that's indicated there. What I did find is you could probably use any of the shields. The connection to each of the arms is the same for each one. So if you wanted a different style of shield, and that part number there, 292, that is not a part number that's on any of these sprues. I'll have a good look through now, but it's just not there. It's a misprint in the instructions. I think it's the only misprint. It's the only one I came across while building all 5 models. But I just can't find 292. I can find number 29. And I can find the other shoulder piece. But the small round bit that goes in front, it's like a little medal, little medallion, which sits in the front of the shoulder piece. That's just not there. So I'm going to cut what I believe it should be, which is part number 29. But there is no 292 anywhere. So I'm going to use part 29 now and pop that on instead. So as I say, it's a misprint. It's part of the reason why you need to read through all the instructions and check whether the part number looks the same as the bit that we're going to take off. I'm having a good old look around here everywhere. I cannot find it at all. So I am convinced that it is 29 rather than 292. It looks the same, doesn't it? It's got the bit like a sort of cross or crux then, which goes in the front here. So the shields, back to that then, just make sure, because there was 4 contact points for most of the shields. Make sure all 4 contact points to the sprue are cleaned up. Because these aren't going to be glued. These aren't going to be glue points to the model. So these parts will be seen. And also going forward, another thing I wouldn't have done at this stage is I wouldn't have glued these shields to the models. I would have left them off just to make it a bit easier to get to the arm and the torso on some of the models when you're painting, and to paint the rear of the shield as well. So yeah, I suppose if I buy a second set of these and I build them with shields again, then I would leave the shields off. But that's just me and my painting. I'm not an excellent painter, so I need all the help I can get, really. So yeah, that just fits on like that. And that'll sit on like that, so I'll just put a bit of glue on there. See, they rest on relatively well. This one, as you can see, the shield, you can pick an angle you want it at. You can have it quite tight. You can rotate it round and have it at a bit of a shallow angle. And the last bit then is the shoulder plate. So these bits are quite small. I probably recommend a pair of sort of rubber-tipped tweezers just to hold the bit that you want to glue on. It'll make it a little bit easier. So this bit is tiny. You know, it's tiny on the tip of my finger there. Probably only 3-4 millimeters wide. So it's a very small piece. But you don't want to leave it off either. You know, all the little details of what makes small miniatures so interesting. So yeah, that shoulder plate then, I'll get that glued on. I'll probably use, perhaps I could use the tip of my knife to help push it in place, or the back of the, use the bit of the file there, just apply a bit of pressure, just make sure the glue is contacting both parts of the, both parts of the piece, the shoulder plate and the shoulder. And then this little small sort of cross metal then that goes on the shoulder, there's a little dot on the front of a raised dot on the front of the shoulder pad, and there's a recessed dot on the back of the thing, so it does sit in there. There is a spot for it to sit. And then you can rotate it around to whatever angle you're comfortable with. And there he is. That's the first one, all built. So yeah, it's quite a nice model. It's a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. So let's have a look at all 5 of them then. So here they are, all built up. As I said, I probably would have left the shields off. The backpacks, you could leave the backpacks off as well if you wanted to, but there's quite a big gap between the backpack and the body, so it shouldn't be too difficult to paint. But you could leave the heads off, you could leave the shields off, you could leave the backpacks off, and sort of paint it as a sub-assembly. But yeah, some lovely figures. There are lots of bits left over as well for kit bashing. Please like and subscribe. I'll try and get my camera position a little bit better for the next one. Thanks again for all your support, and comments are more than welcome as well. Thank you guys.